Two-part lesson, and you might want to write this down because it's really powerful. Part number one of this lesson, and I'm going to do it in the first person so that when you write it, it resonates for you. Part one, I get what I tolerate. So in this case, if I have a project and I try to delegate it out and it doesn't come back right, certainly if I'm completely taking ownership of how I delegate, I would say that that response is probably my issue and I need to communicate more clearly. However, if instead of taking the time and working it through and giving it back and getting it right, I just say, oh, I'm going to do it myself, what am I going to get more of? Exact same work product. Part number two of this lesson, I train what I tolerate. So in that same scenario, I've given a project away. I've explained how it's to be done. It's not done correctly. If I take it back and fix it, what have I trained that person to do? Or what have I trained them that I will do? Yeah, do whatever you want to do. I'm going to fix it anyway. That's what I'm training. Now that's very different from how my partner trained me. When I was first in my Chicago law firm, I had a partner who was a high DC. Now, not that I've ever seen his DISC profile, but I don't have to. I'd tell you he had to be near 100% in both D and C. Really, really strong profile. Completely task-oriented, people side, non-existent. And I was a technology lawyer, and I used to draft contracts for major healthcare systems, for telecommunications companies, interconnectivity agreements. I mean, there were these things that I really did not understand because I was in training. I was a new attorney, and the training was, let's just say sparse, okay? But I'm drafting these 300-page contracts, redlining them on the fly. And I don't really even know so much what I'm doing. I'm just doing my very best to try to figure it out. And this was a job where I was working 7 days per week. That's because my entire department was working 7 days per week. We were the only department in our law firm that worked on Saturdays and Sundays as a rule. If I was ever not there on a Sunday, I felt guilty because I knew my partners were. Not only my partners in charge, but all my other colleagues were. So that was just the culture they created in this little pocket of the firm. When I brought my 300-page agreement to Dennis, and I gave it to him, I was always really scared when I did. I'm like, okay, there it is. Dennis would take it, and he would thumb through it, boom, 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 and he'd stop on a page, and he'd get out his red marker. And he'd circle it, my typo that is, the comma that was missing, and he'd write UGG in big letters to the point where he wrote with markers, and when he'd do it, it was so hard that like the ink would spout off, so you don't see like little stars around the paper too. He'd just do that once, throw it back at me. Do not ever bring something to me for me to be your proofreader. When you bring it to me, it's as though you're giving it directly to the client, and that's the level of service that you will be giving. Thank you, Dennis. Got that going. So that's what Dennis did. Now, I'm not saying that Dennis was a great manager, because part of me just like feared for my life with him. But here's what I have to tell you. He never tolerated anything that was going to a client that was less than the best work product we could put out. He taught me lessons in that brief period of time that I worked for him, because I did not last long with him. But he taught me lessons that I carried through for the rest of my life. And he taught me the kind of level of service that you could give, the amount of personal responsibility that you took. And I only had to have a couple of those conversations with Dennis before I took one extra, maybe two extra times that I ran through it before giving it to him. And you think about that, I still had typos in there because you can't have a 300-page document without having typos, but he taught me that lesson on purpose because he knew if he didn't teach me that early, I would let him be my proofreader. That was not his role. His hourly rate was not a proofreading hourly rate, I promise you that. We were working for all Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. So I just want you to think about, and I'm not suggesting you should be like Dennis and throw a book at somebody like that and tell them in the way that he did it. But what the thing I really respect and appreciate about what Dennis taught me was that he was not willing to tolerate someone abusing his time in any way. He was very clear on his highest and best use of time, and he was very clear on the standards that he had for the kind of work product that we produce. He made me a better lawyer. He definitely did.